As a salon or spa owner, cosmetology school gave you the skills to serve clients, but it definitely didn't teach you how to run a business. Somewhere along the way, you probably thought ownership would mean freedom, but instead you're working more hours than ever, barely paying yourself, and low-key worried everything's going to fall apart the second you step away. Welcome to the Beauty Biz Breakdown, where we give you the real strategies, systems, and structure that you need to fully step into the CEO seat in your beauty business. Hey friends, welcome back to the Beauty Biz Breakdown, the go-to podcast for salon and spa owners who are ready to build a more profitable, more predictable beauty business. I'm Brie, and as always, I've got Chandra here with me today. Hey girl, how are you?
Hello. Doing really good today.
Awesome. Did you have a good weekend?
I did. It went by really fast, but I feel like this weekend was a kind of a catch up, relax, get back on track weekend. So I feel like it's good today. Get things
Awesome.
back on track. Yep.
Awesome. I feel like the weekends always go by too fast anyway, so there you go.
Yep. They do.
All right, so for everybody out there listening, what if I told you that over 92% of cosmetology schools in this country could potentially close in the very, very new future? And yes, you heard me right, 92 freaking percent. If you think that that has absolutely nothing to do with you as a salon or spa owner, stay with us today because by the end of this episode, you are going to understand exactly why it does. So here's kind of where it all starts. This is a rule called the Do No Harms Earning Premium Rule, and it sits inside of a piece of legislation that's called the Big Beautiful Bill Act, which everyone has heard of by this point. It got signed back into law in July of 2025. This rule is actually pretty straightforward, in my opinion. If a school is receiving federal funding to train or teach students in any way, those students should be able to make enough money after they graduate to actually support their life, AKA they should be making a livable wage. Now, when you say it like that, most people are probably nodding along thinking, well, yeah, duh, right? Obviously, that should absolutely be the standard. A school should not be able to keep collecting federal dollars if the people leaving that school cannot make a living wage. That's just, it shouldn't ever happen. It sounds completely reasonable to be on the side of that bill. But the reason this rule is causing so much controversy is, it's supposed to be going for people that were in like 4-year degree programs and graduate programs, things of that nature, which is honestly what it was designed around. And that makes sense to me because most people coming out of those types of programs, they leave school, they go into the workforce immediately, and they're paid a pretty high hourly wage or a salary of some sort. So sure, that makes sense. But the Department of Education got involved and they started applying this rule to certificate programs as well. And that's where everything kind of changed for our industry because cosmetology schools, barber schools, aesthetic programs, massage programs, all of that falls under certificate programs. So suddenly our entire industry got pulled into a conversation that most people in the beauty industry never really saw coming. So this rule not only means these schools have to prove that their graduates are earning enough money after they leave, but there's a test that actually goes along with it. And if these schools fail these measurements in this test multiple years in a row, they can lose access to federal funding completely. No more Pell Grants, no more student loans, nada, like literally nothing. And that matters tremendously in our industry because a huge, and when I say huge, I mean huge, majority of beauty school students, they rely on federal aid to go to cosmetology school. So obviously without that, they're never going to be able to go in the first place. Now, when I was kind of researching all of this, I really started looking at the numbers and I was kind of shocked because the Department of Education's own projections, they're saying that over 92% of cosmetology schools would fail these tests. That's huge. That means we're talking about 1,400 accredited cosmetology programs across the country and about 150,000 students every single year that could potentially be impacted by this. Chandra, that blew my mind. The numbers are so high. I'm just curious, when you first started hearing about all of this, what was your reaction? Like, did it even surprise you that beauty schools ended up in the middle of something like this? And were you floored, as much as I was, about the percentage of schools and students that would be affected?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really feel surprised that we got drug into this because I feel like our industry always seems to have all these gray areas and all these weird things happening all over the place. So it didn't shock me that that happened, but I 100% agree with you. Like when you really look at those numbers and you realize the impact that something like this could have on our industry, I mean, it's unbelievable what could happen. And so I think, that definitely, shocked me. I was definitely like, oh no, what are we going to do? Signing everything to try to, make sure that we try to, not have that happen. And so I think it's a big thing, and everybody should really be aware of what's going on and try to, do what they need to do and get involved if they can, because it's not going to be good if that happens.
Yeah, I think the reaction that you and I both have is probably pretty common across our industry right now. You know what I mean? Look, on one hand, yes, the schools are fighting back and they have some real points that I think are worth hearing. I'm not going to say that they don't. But here's the thing. This is not a career where you just walk out of school fully booked, making incredible money in 1 year. That's just not how it works in this industry. And anybody who has been in this industry for any amount of time knows that. You build behind the chair over time. You earn clients' trust very slowly. You raise your pricing and your skills develop and your reputation grows. And that's just kind of how it all works. But it takes time. So if you're trying to measure someone's income really early in their career and using those years and that number that they have to decide whether the school deserves to keep its funding, you're not really painting an accurate picture of what a career in this industry actually looks like long term. So, in some ways, I think that is completely fair to argue from the school standpoint. But, and I want to be really, really honest here because I think this part matters. The government is not entirely wrong to have their concerns either. And I think it's really, really important for me to say that out loud, even though it might be a very, very unpopular opinion to some people in our industry. Because a significant amount of federal money, it flows into beauty school programs every single year. And when I say a significant amount, we are talking about 770 million in federal student loans in one single year. Like I just got chills. That is a ton of money. And when you actually look at the loan repayment data, it's not a pretty picture at all. In fact, a lot of students are finishing school, struggling to make this kind of income that they were probably told to expect, and then they're falling behind on their payments. And a lot of those loans are defaulting. If you receive federal funding and your graduates cannot repay what they borrowed, the government has to step in at some point because at that point, it's affecting our entire country. So I do understand how we got here, even if the way that it's all being applied does not feel completely fair to our industry. But I think this is where the conversation can really start to get a little messy because schools are over here saying the measurements are wrong and the government's over here saying that the outcomes are a problem. And when you start digging underneath all of that, I think there's a much bigger conversation that our industry has been avoiding for a really, really long time. Chandra, before we get into that, how do you feel about the loans not being paid back? And do you understand why the government is looking into this?
Oh yeah, I agree with you too on that, because I feel like you can see both sides to the situation. I feel like just like we teach salon owners, like there's so many things in your salon that needs to be cleaned up, that needs to be structured, that needs to be run correctly. A lot of the beauty schools, it's like the same thing. And so I feel like there's kind of that both sides, I see those both sides, and I think that, something could be done to fix all of those things, but it's it's something that I feel like the schools need to come forward with, and the government needs to also kind of come forward with what our industry really looks like too.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think those two things are kind of on everybody's mind right now, but I'm telling you, I think this is bringing up a ton of bigger issues that our industry really needs to talk about. One of them for me is way too many people are leaving cosmetology school completely underprepared for the actual job. Now, I know some people are probably going to hate hearing that. I get it. But I also think most of us in this industry already know that there's just no way that anybody can argue that. Like, I have had so many people come into my salon that are just underprepared in every way possible. I mean, look, I paid $25,000 for cosmetology school. And back then, that was a crap ton of money. Yes, I was one of those idiots that paid a ridiculous amount for school because I wasn't well educated. I thought there were different schools and different types. And you know what I mean? I really did. And I shouldn't have done that, but that's a whole nother conversation. It was a really significant financial commitment that I made because I truly believed that I was going to walk out of there actually prepared to build a real career behind the chair. And it was literally the complete opposite. I learned some basic haircutting. I remember getting handed like this paper with a color wheel on it, never talked about it again. I learned how to do a blowout. I learned how to pass the state board. That was pretty much it. After $25,000 and all of those hours, I walked out with no real understanding of hardly anything, no formulation, no toning, nothing about how to handle, real consultations, how to manage expectations when somebody walks in holding a Pinterest photo that makes absolutely no sense for their hair. Nobody taught me how to build a clientele, retain clients, rebook, price my services, increase my income over time, or how to financially survive while I'm trying to get established behind the chair. And the business side of it, forget about it. Pricing strategy, profitability, taxes, understanding your cost, running a salon, running a suite, none of that was even an ounce of the conversation that we had at school. And the crazy part is, I left cosmetology school thinking that I was completely prepared because I had a license. But then I think real life kind of hit me in the face once I actually got behind the chair and I was like, "Oh no, not even close." Chandra, we know my situation is not uncommon. We hear it from salon owners that we coach all the time. But when you left cosmetology school, did you feel prepared to go out there and really do this career on a high level? Or did you get behind the chair afterward and realize how much you still didn't know?
I mean, I think a little bit of both. I feel like the education that I had was a little bit more complete, to be honest, than what I see kids coming out with right now. Because I just think that the leadership at the school that I had, it was a little bit different. They were more involved, but again, not enough to where I could have just went and been on my own from day one and just done everything just fine. Like you can't you can't do that. Like I feel like every school, and I agree, like when we get new students, new graduates, they don't know anything. They literally only knew how to pass state board. I feel like we have to retrain them on cutting, we have to retrain them on blowouts, we have to teach them all about color theory. And you're just wondering how they even pass state board because it's like that stuff's in the test. But I feel like that's all they learn. I mean, and some of these schools are charging well over 30,000, $50,000 now for cosmetology education when people are coming out and still not having a clue what they need to be doing.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is really important for people listening to hear. You know, it would be really easy to hear just maybe my story and go, okay, well, Brie just went to a really, really bad school or she just had a really, really bad experience. But when you start hearing it and hearing the same things over and over from people all across this industry, different schools, different states, different time periods, eventually you realize it's not just one random bad experience, right? This is a much bigger issue inside of beauty education as a whole. And I think this is why it matters so much in the context of everything that we just talked about federally. Because if somebody leaves school without the skills that actually generate real income in this industry, the things that clients are actually asking for and paying for, then of course their early income numbers are going to look very, very rough. It makes sense. Of course, they're going to struggle financially in those first couple of years, not necessarily because the career can't support them, but because they were never actually equipped to do the career that they were trained for. So when the government looks at those early earnings numbers and they start raising concerns, part of me does understand, what they're seeing. Because if enough people are leaving school underprepared and struggling financially afterward, eventually somebody was going to start questioning the whole system itself. Now, do I think the way that they are measuring all of this is completely fair to our industry? Absolutely not. I also think some of the solutions that are being pushed are going to create a whole different set of problems as well, though. And honestly, I think that is a conversation that starts getting really complicated for me in my brain as I was going through this stuff. Because now we've got the states that are starting to come in and they're starting to cut licensing hours and they're doing it really, really aggressively right now. For years, 1,500 hours was just kind of the standard that most states worked around cosmetology, right? Around the licensing. And now all of a sudden we are seeing states dropping that lower and lower and lower. California already dropped to, I think, 1,000 hours. Other states are trying to head in the same direction. And listen, I understand why this can sound really, really appealing to people at first. I do. The argument is basically lower the hours, lower the cost, get people into the workforce faster, make this career more accessible. And if you're young and you're excited to start your career, of course, that's going to sound amazing. I mean, who wouldn't want a faster and cheaper pathway into doing the thing that you're really, really passionate about? But here's the part that I can't stop thinking about. I went to cosmetology school for what felt like forever. I did all the hours, I paid all the money. And as we just talked about, I still came out underprepared. So if people are leaving school feeling underprepared now, how is giving them less freaking education supposed to fix that problem? That's just the part that doesn't make sense to me. The issue is not just the amount of hours. The issue is what is happening during those hours. And reducing those hours is not going to suddenly add better training in there. It's not going to suddenly teach better consultations, right? It's not going to fix all of the things that it needs to fix. It just means students are getting even less time before they're standing behind a real paying client. And the person who ends up paying for this later on is going to be the student. Because what happens? The student finishes their reduced hour program, they take their state boards, they pass, they get licensed, and they're excited. They worked really, really hard for that moment and they should be very, very proud of it. But then they get behind the chair with a real client sitting in front of them and the client wants something, a balayage, a corrective color, whatever. And that student realizes in the moment that they weren't actually taught how to do the thing that they're supposed to be doing now. That's a big problem, Chandra. It's really, really big. They have to figure out on their own dime and their own time what school was supposed to give them in the first place. They learn really, really quick that the license was not the finish line that they thought it was. It was really just the beginning of more investment they were never told they were going to have to make. Chandra, I truly think cosmetology school has gotten worse and worse and worse over time. I really, really do. When you think about newer stylists who have come through your doors over the last year, have you noticed a difference in how prepared they actually are compared to, those years and years and years ago? Like, are you seeing this play out in real time in your own salon is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't feel like, as far as what I've gotten, I don't feel like there's necessarily been a huge difference in that time frame. There were unprepared before, they're still unprepared. Like, I feel like it just kind of is that way. But I do feel like what I find is interesting is when we hire graduates from some of the top schools, the most expensive schools, the best schools, they tend to be the worst. And when we hire graduates from the high school program that taught them, or from the really, really lower end, I guess you would say, like cosmetology schools, they always seem to be more prepared. And I think it's very strange because they're paying that higher dollar for this better school. And I feel like they get less of actual like hands-on, less of actual, training. They're doing more fluff, more this, more that, whatever. But the ones that are coming from some of those other schools, I find like they're putting them behind the chair. They're pushing those kids. They're making them try stuff. They're making them learn stuff that they wouldn't have gotten, in some of those other schools. So I noticed that, to be honest. Like I feel like, so we tend to hire sometimes from what people consider the worst beauty schools, and we get the best graduates.
Well, I can tell you that that is absolutely a fact because when I graduated and I started talking to people, as I was getting into the industry and doing things, there were people that paid $6,000, $7,000 that went to school and they knew probably 80% more than I ever learned. And like I said, I paid a ton of money and that was decades ago. I'm giving away my age, but that was decades ago. So if you look at 25 grand back then, that's closer to 50 grand today. That's a big difference. It really is true, and I just think it's all over the place and it's a really, really big issue. I also think that a license is just not a license anymore. And I know that sounds weird, but with requirements varying so widely right now from state to state and program to program, you genuinely, like we just said, you can't assume that two people sitting across from you, in an interview holding the same license have anywhere near the same preparation. And that is a problem. I think we need to get it solidified across the board. Chandra, how do you think we could go about doing that?
I mean, I really think there could be some sort of guideline that is across the board, like all states adopt the same thing. And I feel like that makes it even better for the students too, because I feel like they would all be taught, it would be a level playing field. Everybody would be coming from the same curriculum, the same expectations, the same requirements, and all of that stuff would make more sense. And they would have hopefully this more similar experience, and maybe it would be a better experience because they could streamline that. And for me, I feel like that would make the most sense. Like, why aren't all the states just the same? Why does one state have to be 500, I'm just making up numbers, but like 500 hours, and another state's like 2,000 hours? But yet somehow the learner seems to have the same level of skill at that point. Like, it's just weird.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think there should be a standardized curriculum that everybody is taught and that everybody learns. That makes it simple, right? Because I can tell you, 90, probably 5% of cosmetology schools out there, the only thing they focus on is passing that state board. That is all they're worried about teaching. And if it takes 1,500 hours to learn that, we're in big trouble because we all know what is included in that test. And it shouldn't be 1,500 hours worth. Something else that's coming up in this conversation is limited licenses. And this is basically where somebody is only licensed to do like a certain category of services. So maybe, lashes, nails, skin, whatever that is. Before anybody gets mad at me, I'm not saying that specialty careers are not real careers because they absolutely are. If somebody wants to build an amazing nail career, that's awesome. If somebody wants to specialize in skin, great. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is these licenses, they really start getting sold almost like a shortcut into our industry. And that's a big problem. You know, if somebody wants to do hair and they find one of these smaller specialty licenses and they choose to do it because it's faster and cheaper and it sounds easier, and they start getting into this and they're thinking, this is going to be so simple. Why are people so stupid for paying all this money and going for so many hours? Then they get out in the real world and they realize I can't actually legally do a huge percentage of the services that my clients are now asking for. That's a problem. That's big. So now this person either once again has to go back to school and spend more money getting additional licensing, like we said earlier, or they are stuck trying to build real income while offering this tiny, tiny list of services in an industry where clients already have endless options. And I don't think anybody is fully explaining to people going into these types of programs what they actually are. Chandra, do you think limited licenses, do you think they genuinely serve people well? Or do you think in a lot of cases they kind of end up creating more problems than what they solve?
I mean, I think it depends on the license situation. Like, I know for just hair, for instance, because we offer apprenticeship, and so we have options for both of the licenses to offer in the salon, cosmetology or just hairstyling. And I feel like if you really are going to only want to do one thing, then I think it's a good option to have those, because we can just focus on hairstyling, we can teach them hairstyling, we can get them behind the chair. That's all they can do. They can't offer any other services like you said. But if for somebody that just only wants that, I think it's nice to be able to have that option. But I do think what happens a lot of times is they do get into the industry, they do start doing one thing, and then they do see, I can't do that, but now I kind of want to do this too, or want to be able to offer my clients, a lot of times an eyebrow wax is an easy add on service. And so it's like, I want to be able to offer this, but now I can't do that because I don't have a cosmetology license. And then I got to go get an SDology license, or I got to add the extra hours to get full Cosmo. So, I mean, I think it's nice to have the option if somebody really truly only wants to do nails and that's it. But again, I think that not having the education of knowing what the options really are and not knowing, having more opportunities if you just did this one instead. I think people don't realize that, and they don't know that, and they do just think it's a shortcut. And they do just think, oh, I could just get into this really fast, and then they regret not doing the whole thing.
Yeah, that's my biggest issue with it is just that it's not clearly explained a lot of times before people go into it. There you will scroll online and see all kinds of certifications and things of that nature to do lashes or whatever it is. And then people are spending a lot of money on those, not as much as going to cosmetology school, but a lot of money. And then they're getting that certificate and realizing I can't really legally even do this where I am. This was just kind of a fun class that I took. And now I'm, in big trouble. So I just think there needs to be more conversation around that. And I think people are just paying attention to the big two things instead of all of the small things that fall underneath it. So here's where we stand right now. We have a federal rule threatening funding for beauty schools because graduate earnings are not measuring up, right? We have schools that were already producing graduates who were not fully prepared for the real demands of the career. And now we have states responding to all of that pressure by just cutting training hours and expanding these limited licensing because that's what they're doing. They're going to make these like the popular thing, which, based on everything we just talked about, is making the preparation problem worse for our industry, not better at all. And then, right in the middle of all of this, one word keeps coming up over and over and over again. And Chandra just brought it up earlier, and it is apprenticeships. And look, I get it. On paper, apprenticeships, they sound like exactly what this industry needs. Sounds like the answer for everything. You've got real world training, you've got learning inside of an actual working salon instead of a classroom, you've got building skills behind the chair alongside experienced professionals. They are getting exposed to real clients, real situations, real expectations from day one. That all sounds really, really good. But here's where I have to pump the brakes on this just a little bit, because there are some really significant practical realities about apprenticeships that I don't think are getting enough attention in the conversation when they come up. The first one is only 22 states in the entire country allow apprenticeships as a legal pathway into the cosmetology career. 22. And Texas, where I am, it's not one of those, which means that in a huge portion of this country, beauty school is literally the only legal way someone can get into this career right now. There's no alternative pathways. There's no backup plan. If schools start shrinking or closing in states like where I live, and they don't offer apprenticeships, there is nothing waiting to replace those. And even in the states where apprenticeships are legal, and Chandra, I know your state is one of them, so I definitely want to bring you in on this in a second. There's a question that I have not heard enough people asking. Who's actually going to pay for this? I mean, cosmetology schools definitely receive money for training the students. So if the expectation now becomes that salon owners are also going to be the ones responsible for training people from the ground up because cosmetology schools, are closing down, with all of the slower service timing that comes with that, the extra product usage, the mistakes that have to be corrected, the time and energy and mentorship that it takes to really do that. Are there going to be grants made available, tax credits, some kind of financial support structure for us salon and spa owners who are taking all of that on? Or is the assumption just we suck it up, we absorb all of that too on top of everything else that we're already doing? Every single salon and spa owner out there listening to this, they know that training somebody from the ground up is extremely expensive. And I think this conversation deserves a lot more attention than what it's getting. Chandra, you are actually in a state where apprenticeships are legal. So you have, I feel like, a front row seat to this. In your honest opinion, do you feel like apprenticeships come out more prepared and more salon ready than cosmetology school graduates? And what does the financial reality actually look like for salon owners right now who are taking those on? Are there any real resources available, or are owners just basically, figuring out completely on their own?
Yeah, I mean that's a whole can of worms, but I can sum it up pretty good. I think that a lot of times it really depends on the salon. I think apprentices could come out way more educated than cosmetology students, way more prepared. And the ones that we have put through our program have already built what I would say is a typical hairstylist first 1 to 2 years of clientele before they're even licensed. And so I think that part can be really good. However, saying that, that is not an easy task for the salon to create. It's not an easy task to get somebody from A to B. It is very, very difficult and it is very expensive. And so I think for a salon owner, like for us, for instance, we have to retrain them all anyways when they get out of cosmetology school. So it kind of already is costing us money to train this person anyways. And so we do eat some of the cost. Now, you can do it two ways. You can go with a company like what we do that offers basically the whole apprenticeship program. So you don't have to be the one to do it, but there's cost involved in that. Or you can try to do it on your own through the state, which is a disaster nightmare. And I would never recommend anybody to do that on their own. I know some owners who have tried that, and it is a mess. But for the financial side, like, I think when you have a program, the apprentice actually pays for it. And so we have it set up so there's a certain amount of money that the program costs and they pay for it. It's legal. You got to make sure your contracts are in place and everything's there, like we talk about all the time. But we actually pay for it and we take a percentage or a portion from their paycheck every single week. They know it's signed off, that's going towards their education. We're not making money off of them. So anybody that's going, oh, I could charge them for this, you can't charge them for it. Like it's not a thing. But you can charge for some of the costs to run the program. And so that's the way that we do it. But it still costs us probably the same amount of money as it costs to take somebody from cosmetology school and get them fully booked behind the chair. And so I think you really have to weigh that, but you have to realize it is not easy. Like, think of having a person who knows nothing about hair at all in your salon that you have to teach from the ground up. And not all people are easy to teach. And so, we've had a couple break us temporarily and we've taken a pause from apprenticeship because we're like, I can't deal with this again for a while. So it might sound like rainbows and roses and all these things as an owner when you're thinking about offering something like that, but there is a lot to it. And it can be done, but you have to realize you might as well, like, definitely quit behind the chair completely and just run a little tiny school in your salon, because that's the only way I feel like you can really do it right when you have those people.
Yeah, I may be the odd man out here, but I have a real issue with that. I have a real issue with cosmetology schools profiting millions upon millions of dollars every single year, and salons doing the same thing that they do, and we have no access to anything. I have an issue with that. And like I said, I may be the only one that feels that way, but I think it is utter bullcrap. And I don't think it's right. And I don't think anybody is thinking about that part. I've listened to 27 podcasts about this whole idea over the weekend. Nobody has brought this up. Nobody. And I think it's a really, really, really big problem. So here's the thing that keeps sitting in the back of my mind through kind of all of this. If the federal rule puts pressure on beauty schools and some of them start closing down and states respond by cutting hours and giving these limited licenses everywhere, which we know is not the best answer anyway, and apprenticeships become the supposed solution, but they only exist in 22 states and they come with enormous financial responsibility for salon owners with no real support structure, then what exactly is the pipeline into this industry going to look like in 5 or 10 years? Because this question matters enormously for every single salon or spa owner listening right now. Your ability to hire, your ability to build a team, your ability to grow, your ability to eventually step back from behind the chair and run your business, all of that depends on there being a healthy pipeline of trained, prepared people coming into this industry. And right now, that pipeline is under pressure from every single direction at once. And I'm concerned about it. Like, I'm really, really concerned about it. Like I said, I live in Texas. There's no alternative pathway for me here. It is cosmetology school or nothing. So if my state has schools that close and they don't offer another way into this industry, my salon could potentially not be able to hire in the future unless people leave their solo suites or they move in from out of state. That's what I'm left with. And that actually makes me think of the one piece of decent news throughout this entire mess that we're talking about today. And I think it deserves a real moment because it really isn't getting talked about either, but I think it could make a meaningful difference for a lot of salon and spa owners out there. So it's the Cosmetology Licensure Compact. And what it basically does is it allows licensed cosmetologists to practice across participating states without having to go through the full relicensure process every single time that they move. Think of it kind of like a driver's license. You get your license in your home state, and that license is recognized in other states without you having to take driver's ed again. Pretty simple. Right now, there are about 10 states that are participating: Alabama, Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland. I'm going to mess up on these, I know. Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, and Washington, I think. And there's multiple state licenses that are actually expected to start rolling out in 26. So there's more of them coming out. I cannot remember what all of those are, but I know some of them are significant. I know New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts are a few of those. But I want to talk about why this actually matters for salon owners specifically, because one of the real friction points in hiring has always been mobility. Think about how often this happens, right? A stylist moves to a new state, maybe following a partner, maybe a family, maybe just for a change, whatever it is. They want to keep working. They have years of experience behind them. And suddenly she's looking at completely different hour requirements, different exam requirements, fees, waiting periods, sometimes months of not being able to legally work at all. That is going to cost real time and money. It does. And honestly, it sometimes costs us the hire altogether because by the time they get through the whole mess that they have to go through, they've already figured something else out. They are already doing something else in a completely different industry. The compact kind of removes that friction that we might run into. And in an industry where we already struggle to find experienced, well rounded talent, anything, anything that makes it easier for qualified stylists to move and keep working, I think is a real win for all of us. Now, I know there's going to be some people out there that completely disagree with me on this viewpoint, and that is absolutely okay. Chandra, I know Arizona is already a compact member, so you have some perspective on this. Do you think this could actually help salon owners who are, out there struggling to find experienced people to bring into their teams? And has it been beneficial for you in the past?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good thing, and I think across the board that needs to be adopted. And for us, like, we don't really hire a lot of new stylists that have been in the industry a long time. Like, it for us, we just usually take them new, train them, put them behind the chair. We just like that better. But my best hires that I have hired from someone that's already seasoned have always been from somebody that's moved out of state. I don't know why, but it always seems to work that way. And so for us, it's really beneficial because we've found, really good stylists who have moved from another state to here to where we are, and they've been amazing team members. And when you have that, like, bottleneck in the process, and they have to get all this reciprocity and deal with all this licensing stuff and all these things, again, like you said, there's been quite a few that before this we would lose because they're like, I don't want to deal with that, and so they just quit and start over. Because if you have to move to a new state and build a new clientele anyways, and that's going to be a difficult task, and you have to go through all these hoops, a lot of them just leave the industry. And that also affects all these things that they're talking about in the big beautiful bill. It's like, if they're
Mhm.
going to take that away, it's because people don't stay in our industry either, because they make it super difficult sometimes for absolutely no reason. And so for us, it's great. And I think it's a great thing. That's one great thing that's come out of some of the new changes is that option.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I built my $1 million business on my island of misfit toys, is what I called them. Every single person that I had was from out of state, and they all had great experience. They were amazing, dependable, awesome people. Sure, I could have trained them up. I had an associate program I could have hired straight out of school, but why do that when there were experienced people coming to me nonstop that had years and years of experience behind the chair? So I love this law. I hope it passes everywhere because I think that it should. I really, really do. Okay, here's what keeps bothering me about this entire conversation. This industry has always been one of the few careers where somebody could completely change their life without needing some massive, expensive degree first, right? Without spending 6, 8 years in college and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Single moms have built incredible lives behind the chair. People who struggled in traditional school settings found careers that were amazing in this industry. People have supported entire families through this industry. People have escaped horrible situations because this career gave them financial independence. Immigrants have come here and built unbelievable businesses from the ground up in the beauty industry. And I think sometimes people making these decisions for us, they don't fully understand how many lives this industry has actually changed over the years. And if schools start closing, the people who lose access to this career first are always the ones that need it the most. And that is the part that really, really, really bothers me. Chandra, I don't think enough people really think about this side of it either. Didn't see anything about it out there when I was looking at stuff. This industry has changed a lot of people's lives over the years. Does that part concern you too when you look at everything that's happening right now?
Oh yeah, 1000%. I think, this is one of the few jobs that I feel like you can do so many different things. Like, you can go into so many different areas. You could be a owner, you could be behind the chair, you could do, there are just so many options. You can have a flexible schedule and still make really good money. And I think there's not a lot of options like that, especially for people who don't have a lot of choices as to what they can do with their career, what they can do with their life. And they can't get jobs that pay well, or they can't get a flexible schedule because they need that with their kids or whatever that looks like. So I think I always tell everybody this is the best job on the planet, like as far as I'm concerned. It's fun, you get to deal with people, you get to do fun stuff, you make killer money, and you're kind of in charge of how much you make and how much you can do and how far you can go. And there's not a lot of jobs that make it, that gateway that easy for people, to be able to have those options. And so I think it's going to be really, really bad if it goes that way.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, this is not just about regulations and federal rules and licensing hours. It is about people, real people whose lives are genuinely shaped by whether this pathway stays open and accessible and actually prepares them to exceed or not. And that's important for us to remember. Okay, so after talking about all of this, here's what I want salon and spa owners to actually do and what I want you guys actually thinking about right now. The first thing, and honestly, I think this is the most important one. We have politicians making these decisions for us, people that have never been in this industry a day in their life. They know nothing about it. You have to start paying attention. I know that sounds basic, but you have to. You have to start paying attention. Get informed, follow the organizations that are actively fighting for our industry in those federal conversations. The AACS, the American Association of Cosmetology Schools, and PBA, the Professional Beauty Association, they are both really, really heavily involved in this right now. They actually have a campaign called My Secret Impact that is specifically focused on how this rule is being applied to beauty schools and what it means for our industry. So get on their email list, follow what they're putting out, read it when it comes in, because the people who are sitting in these rooms, I'm telling you, making these decisions about the future are not salon owners, not even close. They're not working behind the chair every day, and they don't fully understand this stuff. I think the second thing, if you are in a state that already allows apprenticeships, now is actually the time to start seriously researching what that could look like inside of your specific business, not just the idea of it, but the real practical reality of it. You're going to need to look at the legal requirements, all of those things. It's going to be really, really important, but it's better to be prepared now than get stuck, with these schools closing and not have a clue what you're going to do. So do that. The third thing, start getting a lot more intentional about how you evaluate candidates during your hiring process. Because we talked about it today, a license is genuinely not just a license anymore. Requirements vary so much right now, and it's easy to make assumptions, right? So you just need to be really, really careful and consider doing more skills assessments before you make the final hiring decision. We have worked with a lot of people that have hired really, really fast, and it was a very, very big mistake, and it hurt them detrimentally in their businesses. So you need to pay attention to that. The fourth thing, if you are in a state like Texas, where apprenticeships are not currently a legal pathway, you need to really keep a close eye on what is happening at the state level right now, especially over the next couple of years, because I think this federal pressure is going to push more states into exploring alternative pathways. And we need to make sure that our voices are heard in every way, shape, and form. Chandra, is there anything you can think of that you would add to that?
I mean, I think it's just really get informed, find out what's happening in your state, find out what options you have, find out, what you can do or how you can get involved to try to change these things from happening. I mean, that's the only way, it's going to happen. I think our industry pre-COVID, nobody really paid attention to us. We just kind of did our thing. Everybody kind of did whatever in the schools and the regulations and all this stuff. And I feel like after COVID, our industry made a lot of noise. And now ever since we've been looked at differently. And so I think you've really got to start paying attention to these things, knowing what's going on, knowing how you're affected by it, and what options you have if things do change.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And speak up. I have been in this industry for a really, really long time. Chandra and I know a lot of people in this industry. One of the things that I will say is that there aren't nearly enough people involved. And I am preaching to myself right now because I used to be very, very involved with TDLR and things of that nature in my state. And I have really, really stopped doing any of that. And I need to do better. So I'm telling you guys to do better, but I'm talking to myself at the same time. We really, really have to. All right, Chandra, you know what I keep coming back to after everything we just talked about today? This industry that we have built our lives inside of, it has always been worth fighting for. I just think it has. And right now, it needs people who are paying attention very, very, very clearly. Because whether these changes feel really far away from you in your day to day right now, or they don't, they are heading directly toward the thing that you care about the most. We know how possessive salon owners are about their babies, about their businesses, right? It's also going to affect your ability to hire good people, your ability to build that dream team that you want, your ability to grow, to scale, and to do all of the amazing things that you want to do in your business, a business that you have worked really, really, really hard to build. And all of that is going to depend on all of these answers and bills and laws and everything that is being passed lately. So don't wait until it becomes a crisis to start paying attention. I feel like I kind of did this. Like I saw this kind of humming around out there, but I didn't really get involved and pay a lot of attention. And then for some reason over the weekend, I was like, I'm sick of hearing about this. What is all of this about? And I started researching it, and I'm very ashamed in myself that I was not more prepared and didn't know more about it. So we really have to do a better job. Just don't wait until it becomes a crisis, because then we're all in big trouble, and it's really, really hard to try to overturn something once it's already been passed. The owners who are going to be best positioned through all of this are the ones who are building informed, structured businesses right now and getting really involved. And honestly, that's exactly what we are here to help you do. So if you're ready to start building a salon that is truly profitable, structured, and sustainable for long term, head over to thebeautybizagency.com. You can grab some of our free resources and explore our coaching options. If this episode made you think just a little bit differently, if it opened up a conversation in your head that really needed to happen, please share it with another salon owner that's in your life, because this is genuinely a conversation our entire industry needs to be having right now. And the more people who know about it and are informed, the better off we are going to be. And if you have just a spare second, please leave us a 5-star review. It helps us more than you know. Also, make sure that you are staying subscribed so you don't miss out on anything that we have coming up. Chandra, how do they do that?
Yeah, make sure you're following us on all social media platforms at the Beauty Biz Agency on Facebook and Instagram, and the Beauty Biz Mentors on TikTok. And yeah, stay in touch. Let us know if there's any questions you'd like to answer on the air, or if you have any more questions, about some of these topics, because we are here to help.
Absolutely. That's a wrap, guys. You've been listening to the Beauty Biz Breakdown, where salon owners stop building businesses blindly and start leading with strategy, structure, and awareness of where this industry is actually headed. Until next time, pay attention to what's changing around you, because the salon owners who stay informed are going to be the ones best prepared for whatever comes next. Now go out there, make bank, run the show, and ditch that chair. And as always, keep slaying those business goals with a whole lot of swagger. If this episode lit a fire under you, don't just walk away and let it die out. Deep down, you already know where you want your business and your life to go. And the truth is, the only thing standing between where you are and where you want to be is a real plan to get you there. That's exactly what we help you build. So if you're ready to stop trying to figure it out on your own, head to thebeautybizagency.com and book your free strategy call. That call can give you the clarity that you've been needing and a real plan to move your business forward. Because at the end of the day, the only thing standing between you and the salon business you've been dreaming about is whether or not you're willing to take the action and the steps in order to build it.